Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between the receptionist of a rail travel company and a recent customer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, East Coast Rail. How may I help you?
Yes, hello. I left something on a train yesterday. I got this number from the internet. Is this the right number to call?
Yes, it is, madam. I can certainly help you with that. I just need to take your name so I can fill out the lost property form.
It's Helen Flynn. That's Flynn.
OK, I've got that. Now, you say you left something on the train?
Yes, I had been working all day and I was so tired when the train pulled into the station that I got off and I forgot to collect my bag. I left it in the luggage section of the train.
I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Flynn. Did you report this to anybody at the station?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't realise until I got home that I didn't have it. And by that time, the station was closed.
OK, Mrs. Flynn. I just need to take some more details from you and I'll see what I can do. Can I take your address, please?
Yes, it's 57 The High Street, Greenside.
And the postcode?
LW3 9BQ.
OK, LW3 9VQ.
No, it's 9BQ. B for Bravo.
OK, I've got that. Now, can I take a telephone number?
Yes, it's 0700 911 623.
OK, madam. Now, you say that it was a bag you left behind. Can you describe it for me?
Well, there wasn't anything special about it, really. It was black and just a shoulder bag, really. It was leather.
And what was in the bag, Mrs. Flynn?
Let me think. It was my college bag, so there were some books, papers, pens and stuff. Oh, and also my umbrella.
OK, I've got all of that, thanks. Now, which train were you on yesterday?
It was the train from Newcastle to Greenside.
And do you know what time it arrived in Greenside?
Let me see. It was later than the train I normally get because I went to the library to study. It was 10 o'clock, I think. No, wait, it was later than that. I arrived at 10:30.
OK, the 10:30 arrival from Newcastle. And do you know which carriage you were sitting in?
Oh, no, sorry, I've no idea.
It'll be on your ticket if you still have it.
Oh, let me have a look. That would be my handbag. Oh, yes, here it is. I was sitting in seat 26, carriage 6.
OK, great. I've got all the details I need now.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
So, what happens now?
OK, I will process this form onto our system. Then when we find lost property items, we index them all and enter the details into our computer before we can match them up.
How long does that take?
That can take up to 5 days from when the item was left behind.
5 days? That's a long time.
Yes, I'm sorry, but we do have a lot of items left on our trains.
OK, what happens after you've done that? Do I need to call you back or will you send me an email or something?
No, we will call you if we find your bag on the phone number you gave me. If you don't hear from us in the next week, then please do call for an update, but the chances are that if we don't call you, then your bag wasn't found.
OK then, will you post it to me if you find it?
No, you need to come and collect it from the lost property office.
Where's that?
It's behind the ticket office in Newcastle train station.
And do I need to bring anything with me?
Yes, we will need to see some ID.
OK, like a letter from my bank or something?
It will need to have something with a photo on it, like a driving licence or passport or something.
OK, no problem. I'll wait for you to call then.
OK, Mrs. Flynn, thanks for your call.
Thanks, bye.
That is the end of part 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 2.
You will hear a guide at the Museum of Food and Drink giving a talk to some visitors. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Hi everybody! I'm delighted to welcome so many people to our annual pie tasting day here at the Museum of Food and Drink. Now don't worry, it won't be long before you'll get the chance to try out some of our delicious pies. But before that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of this popular food. So, what makes a pie a pie? Nowadays, we sometimes use the word to refer to savoury pies with a potato topping, such as cottage pie. But strictly speaking, a pie consists of a savoury or sweet filling, which is encased in pastry. Pastry itself can be defined as a mixture of flour, water, and some kinds of fat. This mixture, when baked, forms a hard crust round the filling. There is evidence that a dish similar to a pie was made as long ago as 9,500 BC. Our Stone Age ancestors seem to have baked a mixture of cereals, such as oats, wheat or barley, with a filling of honey over hot coals. However, this doesn't qualify as a proper pie since it did not include pastry. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks and Romans all produced a kind of pastry, and it is arguable whose came first. However, pastry was certainly known and used in different areas of the Eastern Mediterranean over 3,000 years ago.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 15 to 20.
The fat in ancient Greek and Roman pies would of course have been olive oil. The Romans were particularly fond of pies that contained oysters, mussels, and other shellfish. Later in Roman times, a pie called placenta became popular. This dish consisted of several layers of dough interspersed with cheese and honey. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? With the Roman conquest, the recipe for pastry travelled into Northern Europe, where olive oil was not available. The fat content of the pastry was replaced with solid fats, lard or butter. The ensuing pastry was more flexible. It could be rolled and moulded, and this resulted in the true pies we know today. I'm going to jump forward several centuries now and talk about the pies of 14th century Europe. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with the old nursery rhyme. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye. 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king? However, you might not be aware that for many years, it was extremely common to have creatures emerging from these animated pies when they were served, in order to entertain important dinner guests at feasts. The creatures weren't really bait, of course. They were inserted into the crust to be released when the crust was cut. In fact, 4 and 20 blackbirds is pretty tame actually. It was quite common to have anything from rabbits, frogs, turtles, and even small people sealed in pies. And there is documented evidence that the French nobleman, the Duke of Burgundy, had 24 musicians entertain his dinner guests from the inside of a giant pie during a banquet in 1454. At this time, pies were known as coffins. Strictly speaking, a coffin was a tall, straight-sided pie with a thick, tough pastry. This was not generally eaten because it was so hard. The point of the crust was to preserve the meat inside. This was particularly important on long sea voyages where fresh meat was not available unless live animals were brought on board. Finally, I'll mention the mince pie, a popular food for British people in the days leading up to Christmas. This pie dates back to the 13th century, when exotic spices and fruits were brought back from the Middle East. In the past, they contained a mixture of meat, fruit, and spices, but nowadays they tend to only contain sweet ingredients. Interestingly, eating mince pies was forbidden during the English Civil War in the mid-17th century. At this time, the indulgences and frivolities associated with Christmas were not accepted by the authorities. Pie eating was done in secret until the ban was lifted 16 years later in 1660. Right, well I think that's enough background. Should we get on with the tasting now?
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 3.
You will hear 3 sports science students discussing an assignment they have been given. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi Lucy, hi Karim. Ready to do this? Oh, where's Rick? Do you think he's forgotten we're meeting?
No, he's ill. He's down with the flu.
Well, that's a drag.
Don't worry, Anna. He says he's happy to do any online research from his bed. We can set up a Facebook group and post what we want him to do.
Okay, cool. So, where do we start? I thought we should create questionnaires first.
I think we should look more closely at the question the tutor set first. Here it is. To what extent do the main sports facilities in the town contribute to the health and well-being of the residents?
It's pretty open-ended.
It is. We've got to narrow it down a bit.
Let's start with which facilities. The main sports facilities in the town would be the big ones that are partly funded by the council, right?
Yes, I guess so. What are you doing, Karim?
I'm on it now. Hold on, the page is loading. OK, the top 4 that come up in a search are the swim centre, the Central Stadium, the Canalside Cycle Track and the Westlands Leisure Centre. There are lots of other little ones like local tennis courts and stuff, but I imagine that they would have fewer users.
Okay, so we go with the big 4 then.
That seems sensible.
So we can create questions about how the people who use these centres feel their health has improved through going there.
Yes, but I still think we need to be more specific about what we want to find out.
All right then, what do you suggest?
Well, questionnaires get subjective data, but what about objective facts? Health statistics across a period of years, for example. And is there a correlation between these and the existence of the sports facilities?
Wow, that's brilliant, Lucy. But how do we get that kind of data?
That's the kind of thing Rick could maybe look up from home, don't you think?
Maybe. He could try. We'd need statistics for this town on rates of heart disease, strokes, high blood pressure.
Diabetes as well?
Okay, yes. For now, and what, 20 years ago? More?
Hold on, just checking. OK, all the sports facilities except the cycle track, which is recent, opened 30 or 35 years ago. So his statistics should be for that time ago, contrasted with now.
That's brill, guys. I'd never have thought of that. But we still need to interview people, don't you think?
Sure. We need subjective data too. People's own use of the facilities and their perceptions of how much better they feel as a result.
Are we including mental health as well?
Why not? Exercise can help a lot with things like depression.
That's true. So we need to design a questionnaire and decide where and how to conduct interviews.
I think outside the various sports centres would be best. We can interview people on the way in or out.
What about the people who never use any of the facilities? Do you think we need to interview them?
No, why? They may do other things to keep fit. Or they may be couch potatoes and take no exercise at all.
Yes, but we need to know how many there are. If only 10% of the population ever use the sports facilities, then they obviously don't contribute much to all the residents' health and fitness.
OK, let's add that to Rick's list of stuff to look up then.
Look, my head's spinning with all this, guys. Let's recap on what we're doing and when and how.
Sure.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 27 to 30.
OK, so Rick is going to look for information online about health statistics for the town.
Yeah, now and 3 decades ago.
Cool. When do we need that info?
This time next week?
OK, then the 3 of us need to design the questionnaires. Can we do that now?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a tutorial in 10 minutes.
Okay, why don't we each think of some ideas and post them on the Facebook page, then meet at the end of the week to discuss and compile them.
Cool, good idea. Then we will need to conduct interviews using the questionnaires at each of the 4 facilities. That's 1 each if Rick is better by then. Would a week be enough for that?
It'll have to be, as we'll need another week or so to analyse and compile all the information, and then to prepare our presentation.
You're right. OK, I'll set up the Facebook page immediately and brief Rick on what he's doing, and we can get on with the rest. Meet here again, same time on Friday.
Fine.
Sure.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 4.
You will hear a lecturer delivering a talk about an innovative architectural design. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 36. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 36.
Welcome to the third in our series of lectures on innovative urban architecture. Today I'll be telling you about an award-winning pair of tall buildings called Bosco Verticale, or vertical forest, which are in the Italian city of Milan. First, however, let me recap on some of the themes we have been studying, and then I can present this project's response to some of the typical problems of modern urban planning. We have seen that, in the face of burgeoning population growth and increasing urbanization, cities have begun growing upwards instead of sprawling ever further horizontally. While this solution preserves greenbelt land around cities for agricultural or recreational purposes, it results in what are sometimes described as concrete jungles. In densely populated areas of high-rise buildings, people can feel alienated through the lack of contact with nature. Furthermore, high-rise residential areas place a big strain on the provision and use of energy, clean water, wastewater management, and transport systems. In addition to these factors, we have also touched upon the problem of soaring air pollution in cities, both worldwide and in Europe. The project I shall be presenting today is an innovative attempt to address some of these problems while avoiding urban sprawl. The Vertical Forests project comprises 2 residential tower blocks situated in a central district of Milan, about half an hour's walk from the cathedral, another iconic piece of Milanese architecture. One of the towers is 110 meters in height and has 26 floors, while the other is 76 meters high and comprises 18 floors. The balconies of these 2 high-rise blocks have been planted with 900 trees, ranging in height from 3.6 to 9 meters tall each. In addition, 20,000 shrubs have been planted. In total, if the trees and other plants on these 2 tower blocks were planted on flat ground, they would represent a forest that was 7,000 square meters in area. Apart from making the buildings look more attractive, both to observers from the street and for residents looking out from inside, the trees offer several environmental benefits. On an urban scale, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, release oxygen, and cool the air. For residents of the buildings, they also filter small dust particles out of the air. All of these are helpful processes in Milan, which features among the top 20 European cities afflicted with air pollution. In addition, they regulate humidity naturally and offer shade in summer, thus reducing or eliminating the need for air conditioning. A further benefit is that they reduce noise pollution.
Before the lecture continues, you have some time to look at questions 37 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 37 to 40.
Boeri Studio, the architects who designed the vertical forest, spent 2 years in consultation with a team of botanists who help them choose suitable trees for the towers. They selected trees and other plants suited to the local climate in Milan, but chose a range of species depending on their position on the building, so that plants that require less sunlight are on the north facades, for example. Additional considerations were providing biodiversity. By varying the species of plant life forming the external so-called living walls of these buildings, they hope birds and insects will be attracted back into the city. The plants used on the building were selected and pre-cultivated specifically for this project and were lifted onto the balconies by cranes, then secured in their specially designed planters. The irrigation of the plants is carried out automatically, using a system that recycles gray water, that is, wastewater from sinks and showers, produced in the building. This offers an environmentally friendly and sustainable solution to the need to provide water for maintaining the plants. All the vegetation in the vertical forest is the property of the management, not the individual owners of each apartment in the blocks. The management team at the vertical forest are responsible for all maintenance of the trees and shrubs, and the owners are not allowed to interfere in any way. Probably a very wise decision if the state of the plants on my own balcony at home is anything to go by. Teams of gardeners carry out pruning and fertilizing tasks 3 or 4 times a year via access through the apartments to the balconies. Sections of vegetation that cannot be accessed from the balconies are maintained by gardeners who descend on ropes suspended from a telescopic arm on the roof of each block. The vertical forest opened in October 2014 and has met with acclaim, winning the International High-Rise Award in 2014 and the Best Tall Building Worldwide Award in 2015. However, as with most highly innovative architectural projects, there has been criticism as well as praise. Among the critics are those who claim...
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.